NHRA Championship Drag Racing, a sport with a rich tradition of intensity and passion. These are the faces of the men and women who have probed the limits of speed and pushed the boundaries of performance. History tells us that this vivid legacy must constantly evolve from one generation to the next. Veteran champions teach future contenders through example, as fathers urge sons to build on what has come before. Today, as the spirit of competition is shared among all competitors, one colleague is now embarked on a farewell tour. After 29 years, Don the Snake Prudhomme will step down from competitive racing. But before he does, he must make his final strike. And it's coming up next. Spectacular day in South New Jersey, Englishtown, one of the more historic sites on the NHRA circuit. It's the 1994 Mopar Parts Nationals. Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Hicks, and we welcome you to the silver anniversary edition of this event, the 25th annual Mopar Parts Nationals. Today, we'll be watching action in 3 different events: the Top Fuel Dragsters, the Funny Cars, as well as the Pro Stock. We'll also be watching drivers ranging in age from 21 years of age to 58. We've already seen some historic record-breaking performances this weekend. That has a lot to do with the weather we've been seeing, and it also has a lot to do with the track. Extremely smooth and extremely high quality. But how quickly the track conditions can change. And for more on that, we head down to the pits and Steve Evans.
Thanks, Dan, and hello, everyone. No one was singing the praises of this pavement any louder during Friday night's cool 50-degree qualifying than that guy, Michael Brotherton. You see, he piloted this Top Fuel dragster to the quickest elapsed time in drag racing history. Brotherton was in the far lane alongside Don Prudhomme. The air temperature was perfect. The air density below sea level. Nitro flames licking at the wing, and there it was. Talk about literally a shot in the dark. Ladies and gentlemen, the first driver ever into the 460s, Michael Brotherton, 469.
We'll take it. I tell you, the 300-mile-an-hour barrier was a big one. The 490 barrier was a big one. The 480 barrier, and then the 470s. Of course, Corey Max led the way all the time, but we'll take the 460s. I believe that one's going to hold for a while.
But this morning, this track turned on him like a rabid dog. The first to find out that the near lane had lost its grip was Winston champion Eddie Hill, up in smoke. Next, Kenny Bernstein, the king of speed. He, too, lost traction and got an early flight. Then it was Connie Coletta, the Winston points leader, out in round number 1. But the classic in round 1 was this tire smoker between Don the Snake Prudhomme in the far lane and Blaine Johnson in the near lane. As it turns out, excuse me, guys, not one driver in Top Fuel in round 1 won in that near lane. Now, these racetracks sometimes have a way of healing themselves, and we can only hope that that happens, especially for drivers who do not have lane choice, and that's the case with Don the Snake Prudhomme. Now, for a historic Pro Stock qualifying story, here's 2-time Winston champion Frank Hawley.
Thanks, Steve. But the record performances have not been limited to the fuel categories. As this driver right here, Kurt Johnson, proved, he became the first NHRA Pro Stock driver in history to break into the 6-second zone during qualifying, and he earned $25,000 for doing it.
What are you going to do with your $25,000?
Yeah, 6 seconds.
698.
698. Thanks for that. Warren Johnson, Horsepower, all the people from Oldsmobile, MTG, everybody.
One of the interesting stories in Pro Stock this year is the fact that every single race, every single semifinal round has had nothing other than a Dodge or an Oldsmobile in it. And 4 of those top cars are world champion Warren Johnson in the Oldsmobile and his son Kurt in another Oldsmobile, Darrell Alderman and Scott Jeffrey in the Dodges. And all of those 4 cars survived the first round of competition.
All right, Frank, let's see now what happens on this track. Round 2 of the Top Fuel category. Pat Austin versus Corey McLenithan. And it has been a difficult year for Pat Austin. He's been to no finals this season. His last win at the 93 U.S. Nationals on Labor Day in Indianapolis.
Corey McClenathan, he has one win. That came back in February. It's been slim pickings since, though. Here's the Winston points after first round. Connie Coletta on top, followed by Joe Amato, Scott Coletta, Corey McClenathan, and in the number 5 spot is Don the Snake Prudhomme. But as we showed you in the Open, Connie Coletta lost round 1 earlier. If Joe Amato is victorious in the second round, he will take the points lead. You get a good look at Corey McClenathan. Fortunate to have lane choice. Pat Austin does not. Now, it is rumored that Corey Mack is under instructions to stage last, to force the other driver to stage first. My guess is, Dan, that Pat Austin has come to the starting line knowing that with a very cold engine and may play the game. Corey McClenathan, a fine driver, formerly campaigned his own car before linking up with the McDonald's team. Every hired driver's dream, a sponsor like this. Let's watch.
And Steve, they've been sitting there for quite some time. This seems like quite a staging battle going on.
Oh, it is. And Corey McClenathan has everything to lose here. He finally does move in. Austin follows. Great start. Corey Mack loses traction. Too much heat, his horsepower, and he had more than he needed. Pat Austin, 4.91 seconds, 294 miles an hour. Let's go to the starting line with Frank Hawley.
Looks like the boys had a little bit of a duel up there on the start line. You think it had anything to do with the reaction times or the fact that McDonald's car smoked the tires?
Well, I hope it did. Corey always wants to stage last, but it was our turn.
Dan, down here at the far end, fairly heated conversation between the two drivers, but I think they're going to remain friends until the next time they meet.
All right, Steve, second round continues in the top fuel category. Don Prudhomme right there, 53 years old. His burnout, he'll go against Scott Coletta. Coletta with a lane choice, and you might remember Prudhomme had that sideways run with Blaine Johnson in round 1. We'll see if he can keep it together here. Meanwhile, let's go back down to the far end with Steve Evans. He's with Pat Austin.
Well, Top Gun, this racetrack seems to have a mind of its own.
Yeah, you know, sometimes that's the best. You know, you try out tricking yourself on these things. You end up losing, you know. You just got to keep it cool. And racing Corey, I mean, it was a little staging battle up there, but I got to tell you, you know, Corey's been instructed to do some things that everybody knows about. He's kind of up against the wall, so Corey's a heck of a driver. We just had to do what we had to do to win, and it was well worth it, you know.
So Pat Austin through to the semifinals. There is Scott Coletta backing into position for his second round match with Don the Snake Prudhomme. Prudhomme came into Englishtown, 5th on the points list, 53 years old, has 1 win this season. He'll go now against the youngster Coletta.
Scott Coletta finished number 2 in the world last year to Eddie Hill. He qualified number 4, a bit better than the Snake in 478. He beat Tommy Johnson Jr. in round number 1, the fellow that won the last race just a week ago in Memphis. Another meeting of the old versus the new guard. I don't have to tell you which is which. No staging games here. Both move in cleanly. What a hole shot by Prudhomme. Oh, a tremendous drag race. Don Prudhomme, 486, and Scott Coletta's 487. But Prudhomme reacted within 300ths of the light, and that's the best you can do without gambling, Dan.
Well, there you see Prudhomme, and watch the incredible start by Prudhomme in the near lane. And as this one unfolds, Coletta may have run 20 miles an hour faster than the Snake. But with that great reaction time, Don Prudhomme heads into the semifinals. And Scott Coletta is gone.
With lane choice, Scott, you had a lot of confidence, but you put the Snake over there and anything can happen.
Yeah, you know, I mean, these cars have so many knobs anymore, you know. Sometimes the lane doesn't really matter if you turn the right knobs, and he turned the right knobs, and he's hungry, and he got 400s on me, and what can I say? You know, we did our best.
For round 2 top fuel action coming up right after this.
This is crew chiefs for John Force, Shelley Anderson, and Warren Johnson know when seconds count, there's no time for second best. 1,600 Craftsman hand tools, made in America, guaranteed forever. Tough enough to be the official tools of the NHRA, only at Sears.
This is a bucket of water, and this is the new Goodyear Eagle AquaTread for performance.
And we welcome you back to Englishtown. The car of Mike Dunn set for the second round in the top fuel category. And if you'll read the writing there, the small print, in memory of Jimmy Nix. A lot of these drivers lost a good friend last night.
And most only heard about it this morning, Dan, the loss of one of the true pioneers in the top fuel category. Jimmy Nix was killed in a high-speed crash at the Texas Motorplex. The drag racing fraternity will always miss the one they called the Smiling Oak. Jimmy Nix.
There is Brotherton. He'll be taking on Mike Dunn in the second round of the top fuel. Let's go back to the far end and rejoin Steve Evans with Don Prudhomme.
You had to be scared to death of that near lane.
Well, you know, anytime you come up there, you're scared to death. And yeah, we're really scared of it. But, you know, it just goes to show, you know, what a great job the crew does. You know, they're the ones that set the car up.
So the Snake is now poised to take on the winner of this second rounder, Mike Dunn and Michael Brotherton.
Michael Brotherton, that's his crew chief, Larry Meyer, walking away, has a chance here to back up that 469 for a national record. You have to do it within 1%. That's what the rules require. Mike Dunn, qualified number 9, middle of the pack at 482, beat Jim Head in round number 1. Has had an off and on again season. Gerald Gwynn, the car owner and tuner, looking on here.
Well, Steve, we saw the 469 from Michael Brotherton on Friday night, but as the track conditions have changed, are we going to see anything close to that?
Not unless they finish this race about 11 o'clock at night. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Mike Dunn in the near lane can drive the wheels off of these race cars. He knows every trick in the book, but not enough to master the near lane. And the world record holder unofficially, Michael Brotherton, backs it way down to a 4.91 second elapsed time for the quarter mile. Good solid speed, though, of 296 miles per hour. And the next pair already fired and ready 5-time Winston champion Joe Amato in the Valvoline car.
And the veteran Amato, 49 years old, he'll be going up against 21-year-old Danielle DePorter, by far the youngest driver in this field today. And amazingly, in just her first weekend in this car, she qualified third. Let's go back to the far end with Steve Evans. He's with Michael Brotherton.
Michael, I think you wanted a little more than a 491 out of the world's quickest dragster.
The motor actually went by the clutch out in the middle of the racetrack. We softened it. Well, we had to put power in the motor because it got hotter out, keep from dropping a cylinder. So with the same amount of clutch, that means the motor went by the clutch. We slowed it down because we knew the track was really going to be slick out there.
You've lost lane choice to the Snake.
It doesn't matter. It'll be fine next round. Don't worry about it.
They always say that when they don't have lane choice. You notice that?
All right, we'll see what happens in the semifinals between the Snake and Michael Brotherton. Right now, both cars ready here, DePorter and Amato.
Rochelle Splatt, the Australian national champion, had been driving this car that Danielle DePorter is in. Now she also has top speed of the meet at 305, first time in the car. Up against Joe Amato. Amato qualified in the number 6 position at a 479, and he's the one that put out Connie Coletta in round number 1.
And if he can get by DePorter here in round 2, he will be the new season points leader. Let's see what happens.
Gorgeous start. Great drag race. One of the best of the day. But as Jimmy Brock, the crew chief, signals, it is Joe Amato. Listen to these times. A 485 beats a 487. The speeds, 298 for Amato, 299 for DePorter. Joe Amato enjoyed a very slight advantage off the starting line. Difficult to see with the naked eye or the camera. But Danielle DePorter, only 21, has a lot of experience, though. Let's not forget that. And here she was certainly not intimidated by Joe Amato, just slightly outperformed. Great drag race.
So the pairing set for the Final Four in the top few. It'll be Joe Amato with the lane choice against Pat Austin. In the second pair, Michael Brotherton taking on Don the Snake Prudhomme. Remember, the driver with a quicker time in the previous round gets the lane choice. And now Steve Evans is with a new Top Fuel points leader on the far end.
Well, Joe, that 200 points will drive you right around Connie Coletta in the standings.
Well, Steve, that's what it's all about here, trying to win us a Winston Championship. But it's a tough racetrack out there. You know, we're real nervous with the sun out and all that, so we're just taking one round at a time. The team did a real good job getting the car ready. Everybody was real nervous. All the Top Fuel cars going up there that time.
485.
Thank you.
All right, now we turn our attention to what has turned into one of the more competitive classes, the Pro Stock. Scott Jeffreyon versus Jim Yates. This is round 2 action with Yates having lane choice.
Even though the Pro Stock cars only have about 1,300 horsepower as opposed to 5,000 for the dragsters, they are still susceptible to track conditions. It's just a little more subtle. Let's check the Winston points after round 1 here at Englishtown. Warren Johnson's Oldsmobile, less than 1 round of racing ahead of the Dodge and Scott Jeffreyon. Jeffreyon followed by his teammate Alderman, then Kurt Johnson and Jim Yates, the man we now see in the far lane, that beautiful Dynamax Pontiac. Yates, his wife Tony, knows this as well. They should have won a race. The fact that they haven't is absolutely amazing. They've got the performance. Usually Jim has the driving talent to go with it. Sometimes falls down on that job. Scott Jeffreyon seldom does. But Jeffreyon is very lucky to be in round 2. If Steve Schmidt had not red lighted in round number 1, we wouldn't be seeing Scott because he has a driveline problem. You're on board. The Mopar Dodge Daytona of Scott Jeffreyon. It's a short wheelbase car, very difficult to drive. The Pontiac, a more stable automobile with its longer platform.
inside the car. Scott Jeffrey on. A lot of shaking going on. Looks like a little bit more than usual.
Oh, yeah, and that put him right out of the racing groove and right out of the race as Jim Yates with a great 4.2 reaction time. Tony cheering that. And a solid 7:24 elapsed time.
And the pit area, Pat Austin, as Austin's crew trying to gear things up for the Top Fuel semifinal with Joe Amato. More Pro Stock coming up in a moment.
When that happens, nobody eats. That's why my guys won't run anything but Fram fillers. You know, Fram gets the nasty stuff out of the oil, so I can go to the other end with my candles lit. And you know, that's in about 5 seconds, nearly 300 miles an hour. You can look at these guys and see they eat pretty near every day.
We'll have that for you as Amato tries to increase his points lead in Top Fuel. Meanwhile, Steve Evans is with Jim Yates at the far end. Yates moving on to the semifinals of the Pro Stock.
For 6 months, this has been a win just looking for a place to happen. Maybe today, Jim.
I'll tell you, we had to come close to home to find a place, but this is really looking good.
7:24, he had problems, but we're talking. That's the important thing.
That's a good thing. I tell you, out there, that track is real tricky. It's anybody's race right now. It's going to change for the rest of the afternoon. We just got to get consistent on it.
Meanwhile, Larry Morgan and Mark Osborne set for their round 2 matchup in the Pro Stock, trying to get to the semifinals. Morgan has the lane choice.
And we're on board Larry's Oldsmobile Cutlass. Larry Morgan qualified number 4 at a 7.06 second elapsed time. He dispatched New Jersey veteran Frank Iaconio in round number 1. Now, Arlington, Virginia's Mark Osborne is the up-and-coming Pro Stock driver in NHRA drag racing. Listen to this. Qualified number 5 at 7:07, and half the people in the grandstands have never heard of him. He beat New York's Joe Lapone in round number 1. Let's see how he can do with the pressure on here in round 2. About as far as he has ever gone in national event competition. Larry Morgan, a real veteran and a many-time winner here on this very pavement. Let's go for a 7-second ride with Larry Morgan. The Lenco 5-speed transmission, a separate handle for every gear. Watch his right fist.
Once again, a little long staging battle going on here between Morgan and Osborne.
And Osborne will not be pressured. Morgan finally in. Sidesteps the clutch. There's 2nd gear, 3rd gear, 4th gear, 5th gear. And Morgan wins it by a car length at a 7.22 second elapsed time to a 7:29. Both drivers at 191 miles an hour. Osborne leaves knowing he had a bit of a hole shot.
Down the starting line, David Rampy getting set for Kurt Johnson, and his work is cut out for him. Johnson, of course, bursting onto the scene last year, the rookie of the year last year, number 2 on the points list, and the son of the reigning Pro Stock champion, Warren Johnson.
And Kurt has controlled the flow of this event. The first 6-second run, that got him 25 grand. He backed it up for a record. That got him some more bonus cash. David Rampy wishes he had this much money. Then Saturday night, Kurt won a special Pro Stock race that paid him $50,000. So Kurt Johnson is taking home a sack of cash from New Jersey.
And trying to add to that sack today, 31-year-old Johnson from Lawrenceville, Georgia. He and his dad, the first 1-2 father-son tandem in NHRA Pro Class against David Rampy, the 39-year-old winless in Pro Stock.
That's right, but Rampy was an outstanding driver in the sportsman category. He's got a great sponsor in Winnebago Motorhomes, Harold Stout, the car owner. It's a matter of time, kind of like Jim Yates, before this team will be in the winner's circle. Kurt Johnson. Does he have an Achilles heel, or is he invincible? Rampy a slight advantage. Rampy hanging in there. Kurt near the center line. Oh, Kurt Johnson just ekes this one out. Falls way off on the performance scale. 7:27 to a very tight 7:29.
And Kurt only 3rd quickest in this round, and very fortunate to get by David Rampy and earn himself a spot in the semifinals of the Pro Stock. And watch the excellent driving job by KJ as his car gliding toward the center line, has to work it back, step off the throttle a bit, and still beats David Rampy. And had he crossed that center line, he would have been disqualified.
Slipping and sliding to a 7:27. Kept it off the fence anyway.
Holy shake, rattle, and roll. We were up on the cones at the 1,000-foot there, and it was getting pretty hairy. I thought the dash was laying in my life there for a second. We need to smooth this old Mark Christopher Olds out, that's for sure.
excellent round 2 matchup in pro stock now set between Darrell Alderman and Warren Johnson. Warren Johnson, the 2-time defending points champion in pro stock. Darrell Alderman also won in 90 and 91.
I'll tell you, this is a race the fans really want to see, but they thought it would be in the final. Only Kurt Johnson out-qualified the Dodge of Darrell Alderman. Alderman, the number 2 spot at 7:02. He beat Jerry Eckman's Pontiac in round number 1. Warren Johnson is a crabby man. He's had the worst national event in about 3 years. He qualified number 7 at 7.08 seconds. That's good for most people, not for Warren Johnson. Beat fellow Oldsmobile driver Mark Howick in round number 1. I tell you, there's a little bit of war involved here between Dodge, between Oldsmobile, between the 2 individuals, between a hired driver and an engineer that drives his own car. There's a lot more differences than there are similarities between these two. Darrell Alderman poised and ready like a fighter pilot. Look at him, Tom Cruise. Bring the RPMs up. Johnson away first. And Alderman knows it. He looks over and sees him. He doesn't see him now because Johnson has mechanical problems. Alderman 7.14, 193 miles an hour. First time in a long time, Dan, I have seen him outgunned to the starting line. Warren was backed into a corner and had to do something.
Well, there is Warren Johnson in the near lane. Watch after the great start how he suddenly begins to lose control of the car. The back end begins to slide, and Warren Johnson just not able to get enough going to chase Alderman down the track. But it is not just Dodge and Oldsmobile in the Final Four. The Pontiac of Jim Yates has a spot against Darrell Alderman. Alderman has the lane choice, and in the second pairing, Larry Morgan versus Kurt Johnson. And believe it or not, Morgan has the lane choice in that one. Steve Evans?
You want to see a smile? These conditions have played right into your hand.
Yes, they have, Steve. The car's not hooking as hard, but it's going straight when it leaves the starting line. It shook a little when I went in second that time.
And the Oldsmobiles don't have the good air now.
That's right. So hopefully we can get this race over with before it gets too cool.
7:14.
Well, that's not bad for those conditions.
It's incredibly good, as a matter of fact.
Alderman on his way to the semifinals in the pro stock and looking good with Warren Johnson out of the competition. Next, the semifinals of the funny car. Al Hoffman getting set to take on that man right there, Mark Oswald. Back to Englishtown in a moment. Famed Old Bridge Township Raceway Park in Englishtown. 1994 Mopar Parts Nationals continue. Dan Hicks with Steve Evans and Frank Holly, and set for the semifinals of the funny car competition, Mark Oswald and Al Hoffman. Oswald with the lane choice.
And Oswald could be a real spoiler in this deal. Tommy Anderson getting some of the smoke out of the cockpit of the Hoffman car. As you can see, the points after round 2, John Force is in jeopardy of losing that lead to Hoffman. Casey Spurlock 3rd, Jim Epler 4th, Cruz Pedregon in the 5th position. In fact, if Hoffman wins here, he takes the points lead. But he's got to be nervous about Oswald. They're only a thousandth of a second apart in qualifying. Hoffman qualified number 2 at a 5:06. He beat Ray Higley in round 1 and Tom Hoover in round number 2. Oswald not running a full schedule, getting ready for a full onslaught in 1995. Qualified number 3, 5:06 as well. Beat Gary Saloni and Cruz Pedregon in earlier rounds. John Force is not around to defend himself. We'll talk more about that later. He lost earlier on today, and I guarantee he's up in one of those air-conditioned suites, rooting heavily for Mark Oswald in the far lane. And there you see to the left, Mark Oswald defeats Al Hoffman. Hoffman will not take the points lead from Force. 5.15. That is just excellent at 291 miles an hour. Look at all the black smoke. That's really clutch dust. Hoffman had no confidence in the near lane. They set the clutch up so loose and not smoked the tires that they got outperformed by Mark Oswald in a great race.
And Oswald has himself a spot in the finals of the funny car competition. What a day it has been for that man. 50-year-old Gary Bolger not only into the semifinals, he is into the finals. He'll get a free pass there. We'll explain that more in a moment. But first, let's go down to Steve Evans. He's with Mark Oswald.
Let me ask you about the final round, Mark. It's going to cool off. This car might even run better. And you're going to race a guy, well, let's face it, doesn't have a lot of parts and pieces.
No, but he's had some good luck today, and he is a good hard racer and an excellent driver. You know, we're going to have to be careful. I think, you know, if we could run a 5:10 round in there, we'd be awful hard to beat.
Indeed.
Mark Oswald not about to downplay a final with Gary Bolger, especially here in Englishtown.
And Mark knows he's dangerous by his qualifying time of 5:17 in a real budget little hot rod. Gary Bolger, whose motto is driver carries no cash, 1 round to go, ran into a driver who carries a lot of cash, but money doesn't always buy you success, even if you're the #1 qualifier at $4.99.
And there sat the #1 qualifier, John Force. In the far lane was Gary Bolger. And it ended up to be nothing but a bad dream for John Force.
Even though you're out second round here, can I assume the nightmare will continue?
Well, it will. You got to look at that 499 and the conditions. This old car is starting to run, and this racetrack was good to us earlier, and it just wasn't here today for us. But like I say, yeah, it's their nightmare, not mine. We'll be back.
So Gary Bolger moved on with the upset over John Force and was set to take on Jim Epler in the semifinals. But Epler had some problems in his second round race and suspected that he would not be able to move on. Here's Frank Hawley.
The damage to Jim Epler's engine was every bit as bad as he suspected. In fact, here's one of the pistons that came out of it. You can see it's a piece of junk now. These pistons aren't supposed to come out of the engine by themselves. But this isn't the only engine they've hurt. Here's another one over here, another broken rod, and that's not the only one. They've broken rods on 3 engines this weekend, and at $35,000 apiece, crew chief Mike Clover says we're going to have to stop.
That's a problem they desperately need to find. Now look at this. Gary Bolger is going to put himself in the lane. He figures Mark Oswald is going to stick him in anyway. He's just going to test the traction. I guarantee he won't make a full pass. They have no spare parts, not even that much nitro. So now he knows exactly what his clutch setting might be for the final round. These guys may not have a very big budget, but they sure have some good racing instincts. Very smart. Dale Greasy and Gary Bolger.
So the final of the funny car now set. Gary Bolger, never in the final round in his career before today, has a chance to get into the winner's circle against Mark Oswald. And here we have the Top Fuel semifinal set between Michael Brotherton. He'll take on Don Prudhomme. Brotherton had that great run on Friday night. The track record, quickest in NHRA history. But can the Snake handle him here in the semifinal? Now we're set to go back to the far end and rejoin Steve Evans with Gary Bolger.
Gary, sorry to have to tell you, didn't get lane choice.
I don't think we need it. Our main concern there was to get up there and test the track, see how much of starting line it'd take, and we know what we need to know now.
You did it in the lane you figure that Mark's going to put you in.
Oh, I know it'll be that lane, because Mark's ran the left lane all day. He thinks the right lane's bad, but it's not. It'll be all right.
Win or lose for Gary Bolger, he'll never forget this day in Englishtown, New Jersey.
And there's a man that we can't forget as being a major part of that historic 469. That was Larry Meyer, who wrenched Tom McHugh into a Top Fuel victory here just a couple of years ago. Knows this macadam very, very well. Now Prudhomme has finally got lane choice back in his corner. And his reaction times have been better than any of the so-called young lions. Prudhomme away. Prudhomme is gone to the final round at 4.87 seconds.
And after all these years, yet another driver finds out that the venom is still deadly. In Englishtown for the 1994 Mopar Parts Nationals, you're in the pit area of Mark Oswald as he gets set to take on Gary Bolger in the funny car final. But let's go down to the far end and visit with Steve Evans. He's with Don Prudhomme.
Well, it might have nibbled a few parts, but do we care?
No, not really, not right now. Not in this kind of heat. It's really difficult, you know, as I was saying before. It's touchy. You know, the trick is just get down to the end and hope your wind light comes on. And Wes, certainly all the guys doing a good job.
Well, who wants the snake? Will it be Pat Austin or Joe Amato? This is the other Top Fuel semifinal. The burnout's complete. Amato with the lane choice.
And interestingly enough, another confrontation between youth and exuberance and old age and treachery. Over in the far lane is treachery. Joe Amato knows how to get it done. 5 Winston titles. Pat Austin has won that many titles in sportsman drag racing, but not in Top Fuel, not in the kings of the sport. Yet even leave, no advantage there. Amato's motor is failing. Austin wins it with a lackluster 5.06.
So Joe Amato unable to add to his Winston points lead, and Pat Austin will need a lot more firepower than that in the Top Fuel final to get by Don the Snake Prudhomme. 53 years old against 29-year-old Pat Austin. and Prudhomme has the lane advantage by near 0.2 of a second. Meanwhile, Steve Evans has made his way back to the pits of Gary Bolger.
It's been a long time since we've had a really good Rocky story in drag racing, and Dale Creasy, car owner, Gary Bolger driver, definitely qualify. This hot rod hasn't seen a new part maybe ever. In fact, John Force's guys just dropped off some clutch parts. They donated those to the cause. The pumps on the front of the motor were bought at a Jim Epler garage sale. And look in front of the pumps. There's something not there. A computer. The only pro car I know of that doesn't have one of those devices. And there's something else they don't have besides a budget, and that's a fancy trailer with a lounge in it. In fact, this is their trailer, and it would fit in John Force's lounge. Hello? Nothing.
All right, Steve, maybe we'll see Gary Bolger pull off one of the biggest upsets in funny car history. He's in that final with Mark Oswald. Meanwhile, the semifinals of the Pro Stock, Larry Morgan and Kurt Johnson. Morgan with the lane choice.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be a big deal here. Remember Kurt Johnson, the problems he had navigating even the far lane, considered the good lane, got right up to the center line. Now he's on an ice rink compared to what he enjoyed before. Let's see what happens. Great lead by Morgan. Morgan is in control here. A huge upset. Larry Morgan, 7:20, defeats Kurt Johnson's quicker 7:19, both 192. Right here, watch the purple car. He outdrives Kurt and then outruns him.
Well, Larry Morgan knew he had to have everything working perfect to oust Kurt Johnson, but what a weekend for Kurt Johnson. First in the sixes, sets a track record, and leaves Englishtown with more than $86,000 in winnings. The most lucrative pro stock racing weekend in NHRA history. Steve Evans is at the end of the track with Larry Morgan.
You driving devil, you did it on a hole shot. That's how you did it. A 19 lost to year 20.
Well, you know, that's the fastest guy out here, and I figure I might as well try and move on him just a little bit.
It looks to me like the conditions are coming around for the Oldsmobiles as it cools off.
Well, I think so. I think that we'll be, you know...
It hurts the Dodges more than it.
Well, I hope so. That's for sure. I just hope we can get this Castrol Super Clean Oldsmobile down and turn the wind light on. That's all I care about right now.
Now let's see if you get lane choice.
And let's see who Larry Morgan will face in the finals of the Pro Stock. Will it be the Yateses or will it be Darrell Alderman? Jim Yates beat Alderman earlier this year, the first round race in Atlanta. But it would be an upset if Yates could get by Alderman here. Is there another one left here at Englishtown, Steve?
I don't know. That man is awful tough. If Yates pulls it off, he'll be the first Pontiac to make the final round the entire 1994 season. But you saw what Larry Morgan was able to accomplish on the starting line with good reflexes. Yates has the best reaction time of the day. You can see how hard the Dodge is to control. Alderman almost lost it, but now Yates fades. Even though he had the quickest reaction time of the event, Darrell Alderman has the quickest elapsed time of the day at 7:10.193 into the final against Larry Morgan.
Alderman, the #2 qualifier, one of the hottest drivers on the Pro Stock circuit against Larry Morgan, a perennial contender. Alderman will have the lane choice.
You wipe that smile off of Larry Morgan's face with that 7:10. He's not looking forward to racing you, I don't think.
Well, you know, the conditions will favor Larry for the final round because it's going to be a good bit later. Those buzz boxes run better, you know, in the good air.
The high revving engines you're talking about.
Yeah, the high revving engines. And of course, the track will suit them, too. There'll be more initial down there for them.
This may be the last ever race for this car.
Yeah, you know, hopefully the new Avenger will be out here in 2 weeks to test it, and then the first national event will be in Columbus.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I can tell you the competition isn't.
And we're all looking forward to seeing it right here on NBC Sports World. Meanwhile, Wes Cerny, crew chief of Don Prudhomme, his driver in the finals of the Top Fuel, making sure everything is in order.
Craftsman.
Set for their final round matchup with Don the Snake Prudhomme. But first, the Pro Stock final between Larry Morgan and Darrell Alderman.
I'll tell you, Dan, for Larry Morgan to beat that Dodge, he needs divine intervention. Alderman fresh off a 7:10. He's got lane choice. I don't care what he says about conditions favoring the Oldsmobile. Larry Morgan is in real tough. But this is his first final round this year, so he's making real good progress. And there you see Larry. Hands on what they call the Lento levers. Look to a planetary-style 5-speed transmission. 500 cubic inches of Oldsmobile. Alderman has left too soon. Unbelievable. And it wasn't even close. In disgust, Darrell Alderman shuts the car off. He left 800ths of a second too soon. Morgan wins it at a 7:13.194. I don't believe it.
Alderman is back competing after a 2-year absence, but known as one of the most natural and gifted drivers on the circuit. But as you can see there in the far lane, way out front. So the up-to-the-minute Pro Stock point standings. Warren Johnson now very vulnerable from both Dodges. Larry Morgan is currently in 6th place, and he's also with Steve Evans at the far end.
If anybody was going to red light, I thought it'd be you.
I wasn't going for it. I knew that sooner or later I'm bound to beat that guy.
He beat himself.
Well, regardless, I got the win light, and I'll tell you what, I'm just so happy for my team. I bruised all my guys up this week, and you know, we're working real hard at the shop. I got a great bunch of guys.
I've been there, I know.
Jimmy, Rocky, Andy, Charlie, I mean, my wife, kids, and I'm just happy to be on the Castrol Super Clean team, the Oldsmobile, all these guys, you know, without them I wouldn't be here, and I'm very proud of them.
We're happy for you.
39-year-old Larry Morgan picking up his 8th career win. Now Mark Oswald and Gary Bolger in the funny car final.
After what we just saw with Darrell Alderman, who had that race in the sack, I guess anything could happen. Could Gary Bolger possibly upset the titan of the funny car category at this event, Mark Oswald? Finished number 9 in the world last year, got him a little cash flow. I figure right now they got about $17,000 even if they lose here. And that would be their biggest payday ever. Funny car final round, the Mopar Parts Nationals. Bolger leaves with him. Bolger hangs it. Suddenly something happens to Bolger's car. And Mark Oswald, a very nice 5.16. Bill Schultz and the crew thrilled with this win. 286 miles an hour. Bolger departs with a 7:53. Bolger had a great lead, stayed right with him. And Bolger coasting up, is yelling the throttle linkage. Dan fell off the car.
And Gary Bolger was right with Mark Oswald from the start, but then the problems. The fire is gone, the linkage falls, and the throttle is gone as well. And the storybook weekend for Gary Bolger ends in the finals. The loss to Mark Oswald, who picks up his 20th career win. He is at the far end of the track now with our Steve Evans.
Been a while, Mark.
Been a long time, Steve. I'm really proud of my guys, these in-and-out guys. They don't race all the time, but they really showed today that they got what it takes.
You have your sights really set on 95. You're just tuning up.
Yeah, we are. We're rebuilding this team, and thanks to In-N-Out Burger and Penn Hall, International Trucks, H.M. Elliott, Pennzoil, people like that have helped us, even though we're not running a full schedule. That's really made the difference.
Well, I tell you, you got their attention today. Consistency, incredible.
Yeah, Bill just had this car running excellent.
You polished him off with a 16.
Thank you.
And Mark Oswald improves his standings to 13th as we look at the funny car points after the Mopar Parts National. John Force still leading the way. Meanwhile, Don the Snake Prudhomme getting set for his Top Fuel final. He'll take on Pat Austin. We'll take a break here from Englishtown. Let's head to our New York studios for our Prudential Sports Update. Town, New Jersey. Also twilight on the race career of Don the Snake Prudhomme, set for the final in the Top Fuel here at Raceway Park. When Don Prudhomme pulled into Englishtown in 1959 as a crew member, Pat Austin, whom he'll face here in the finals, wasn't even born yet. Meanwhile, this Mopar Parts Nationals is the 250th national event for the Snake. Late last year, he announced that after the 1994 season, he would retire. He leaves with mixed emotions as he prepares for his final strike at this quarter mile. His professional career began in 1962, driving Top Fuel dragsters. In 1965, he won his first national event. He then turned his attention to the Nitro Funny Car class. For 4 straight years, beginning in 1975, he reigned as Funny Car World Champion in the legendary Army car.
And that car proved to be just a fantastic car. Of course, we had good financial help, but I had a good crew with Bob Brandt. And the Army car was, that lives in my heart today. You know, I has to, you know, lots of pictures. People bring up pictures of that car because, you know, it was such a successful car.
Before retiring his Skull Bandit funny car in 1989, Don Prudhomme won 35 national events, remaining to this day the winningest funny car driver in history. After switching to Top Fuel in 1990, Prudhomme became the third driver to top the 300-mile-per-hour mark. Today, Don Prudhomme still commands the respect of racers, young and old.
Don Prudhomme, seeing him go, it's kind of gets to you a little bit, because those are the guys I grew up watching the sport, and they made this sport what it is today. And when you lose somebody that valuable to the sport, I mean, you're gonna have to get something else, create something to carry it on, and so we can have the same amount of class that we had when he was here.
There are a bunch of great drivers out there now, and I'm enjoying the sport. I'm enjoying this year, and I hope to have a young driver in my car. But I'll tell you what, if they beat me, that's fine. But I'm going to give it all I got.
Don Prudhomme is not the kind of athlete or person who would cruise through his retirement year. And Jim Brissett, crew chief for Pat Austin, knows that. The Snake is bringing everything he's got to the starting line, professionally and mechanically.
Steve, most of his success in the funny car division, 6 victories and 6 funny car finals here, just his first Top Fuel final appearance here at English Town.
And as he strapped himself into the steel cocoon, he said out loud, really to himself, this kid, he's going to be tough, Snake, tough. Just getting himself psyched up for, as you said, his first ever Top Fuel final in front of some of his favorite racing fans.
And he's already got one victory this season at the Slick 50 Nationals. Is there another one left in the Strike Back final tour for Don the Snake Prudhomme in the far lane?
Snake lights the stage last. Austin goes in. Snake gets his wish, but he's a little tardy. Austin with the lead. Austin with the win by a car length as Prudhomme smokes the motor. Austin wins at 488 to a 489. Pat Austin made it look worse than it was with a sterling starting line reaction.
And Pat Austin knew he had to earn every bit of this victory right from the start. He puts more than 0.05 of a second in the bank right off the start. Great reaction time from Austin, but Prudhomme still wasn't out of it. As they reach the half track, he's in the race, but begins to lose his engine. And at this point, Prudhomme knows he's out of it as Austin races to his first Top Fuel victory of the season. He beats the legend, and he's at the far end of the track with our Steve Evans.
Chalk that one up to youth and exuberance and gorgeous driving off the starting line. An 88 to an 89, a classic.
Well, you know, you race the Snake, who's all we all know is a big hero of mine, and anybody who follows drag racing, we love him to death, and I want to beat as much as I can, so when he goes out, he can say, that last year was tough because those Austins, boy.
First win of the year, a sweet one.
It is, you know, this is a big race. This is one of the top 3s, and just happy to finally get our, our sponsor hung with us from tough times, and Castrol, Syntec, Dynomax, Oldsmobile, Red Wing Shoes. You know, I'm happy they stuck with us, and they make us perform. That's what we want, and that's what it takes.
Have fun tonight.
I wish you could film this party. NBC, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So with the victory for Pat Austin here at English Town, he moves up 3 notches from 7th to number 4. Don the Snake Prudhomme also moving up a couple to the number 3 position. And Joe Amato, with his performance today, moving past Connie Coletta atop the point standings. But the day belonged to Pat Austin and his crew. For Steve Evans and Frank Hawley, I'm Dan Hicks saying so long from English Town, New Jersey. And for the Snake, get a few more goodbyes left on the final Strike Tour.
This has been NBC's Sports World, and today it was brought to you by Castrol GTX, engineered for today's smaller cars. By Allied Signals Fram Filters, you can pay a little now or a lot later. By the new Dodge, a division of the Chrysler Corporation. And by Mopar, Chrysler...